years.
This is what it'd be like, honey, if you were the president. You'd be having your picture taken all the time.
And you wouldn't take your picture like this, would you?
Absolutely not. Open.
Over here. Okay, and you don't need to look at the camera. Pretend like the camera's not there.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Just pretend like we're talking to each other.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright, so when we last left off, we were talking about, well, at least each of you had discussed when you had met at the University of Wisconsin, and I thought it was uncanny how similar your stories were.
It must have been true.
I was expecting to hear a little bit of variance between the two, but it was right on with both of them. So tell me about the period of time after you left the University of Wisconsin. You said that you had a feeling in the pit of your stomach that you needed to make an honest woman of Grammy.
Yeah, when she went back to the University of Wisconsin for her second year, I just was overwhelmed with missing her and a sense of aloneness and loneliness. And I knew I had fallen in love, and I wasn't sure I was in love. I sure liked her prior to that. And so I went into the Army in October of that year. I had to do 6 months, I thought was all I had to do.
Which year?
1960. And when in October, when I came home at spring break, I went up to Connecticut to see Lily. I had purchased a wedding, an engagement ring over Christmas break at
That one right there?
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Yeah.
So right here.
in Newark, New Jersey. I went up to see her and took her out on Todd's Point, which is a beach area in Old Greenwich that's on Long Island Sound, and asked her to marry me. And she said yes, and I was thrilled.
So how much actual dating did you do before the proposal came, or was it just like a fleeting thing and then you knew you needed to marry her?
Well, we got married essentially 2 years after we first met. And we dated.
Not quite 2 years.
We had distance issues, but we dated. So we dated continually, but not frequently because of our distance through those 2 years.
It was never, so you guys dated, but it was never like, oh, this is my sweetheart back home, or, anything like that. It was like kind of a, yeah.
Well, I don't mean to demean it. I mean,
Yeah, it wasn't casual.
It wasn't casual, but she was fun. She could dance cute.
Why was she fun? She was cute. Yeah, a good dancer.
As you can tell, she laughs a lot. She's the world's easiest laugh, so most guys like to be laughed at. And have a full-time audience in your house, pretty nice.
And what did you think of this whole thing? Were you expecting a proposal?
Actually, we had talked about getting married. One of the funniest stories is that Grandpa took me out to McDonald's for dinner, and
Grandpa was on a budget.
right, and he asked me to get pinned to him, and he said, "Well, if we're going to get pinned, we might as well get married." So,
What does to be pinned mean?
pinned mean to take his fraternity pin and wear it, which would indicate to the world that I was spoken for, like going steady. And so we did not get pinned. And I was going to go home at Christmas time, and we were going to get engaged at Christmas. And I don't know if I got cold feet or Grandpa got cold feet.
I never had cold.
Oh, okay. It must have been me. And I thought, oh, do I really want to get engaged? And I thought, no, not yet. So, and of course, the minute I saw him, I regretted my decision. But we couldn't get it done then because he left the ring in his locker, I think, at the Army. Anyway, so then we said, okay, we'll wait until spring break. And that was a very hard time because I did wear his pin then to announce to everybody that I was taken. and it was that in some ways it was a very sweet time. In some ways I wish that we had done it a little bit differently. I wish I'd finished school first, but I knew that if we didn't get married, then he would go off and he would find somebody else. And I knew that this was the man I wanted to spend my life with. So there really was no choice. He was a catch.
One of the interesting things at that time, you were talking about it, I bought the ring, $325 ring, at a time when that was probably what I would have made a month if I had a job.
It's big money.
As a college graduate.
Mm-hmm.
I had it in my foot locker in my barracks at Fort Dix with 40 other guys, almost all of them from Brooklyn, most of them from the streets of Brooklyn. And I was nervous all the time because I figured somehow I would slip and find out I've got this diamond ring in my foot locker and it was going to be gone. And so I'd find reasons to open it up all the time, which is the worst thing I could have done, but I was calling attention. And it must have something in his foot here. To make sure it was still there. But
when Grandpa took me down to Todd's Point, I knew he was going to ask me to marry him. And I was so excited. I was so excited. I could not stop giggling. And he said, now, be quiet. You know, this is serious. And I was so excited, I just couldn't.
yeah, I'd like to ask a girl if she'd marry you, and all she does is laugh. Come on. You're the last guy. You gotta be kidding.
No, it wasn't that kind of laughter. It was kind of excited. Oh my goodness, like the best Christmas present ever that I knew I was going to get.
It's like getting a puppy for the rest of your life.
So we got engaged. I then went to work for Alcoa full time. We decided, I don't know how we picked the date, August the 12th, 1961. And I was on a 3-month traveling training tour with Alcoa. So I did almost nothing while Lee and her mother and my mother planned the wedding, which was held in Connecticut.
Greenwich.
And we were married by my uncle, who was a bishop in the Episcopal Church, and his son Frederick, who was a minister in the Episcopal Church.
And we were married in an Episcopal church there, and I had been brought up a Congregationalist. My family were Congregationalists. And one of the things that we've talked about is that we never asked my parents if they would like us to be married in a Congregational church. We just assumed it was going to be an Episcopal church so Uncle Fred could marry us. So I'm sorry, Mom, I didn't even ask you. But anyway, it's funny, you look back on the things, and when you're young, you just kind of go forward. And you don't think about the way other people think or feel, especially your parents.
Yeah.
And sometimes you regret it afterwards.
Yeah.
Jody later, when we were living in Minnesota, I remember walking with her one night, I probably told you the story, and she said to me, "What were your and Mom's plans when you got married?" And I went, "Oh." So, what's that about? I said, "We didn't have any plans." I mean, really. I mean, that's how young we were. We were in love. I had a job. And we said, "Let's get married." But I'm aware later on, probably for the good, I'm sure for the good, young people were getting married later in their years rather than maybe just turning 20 when we got married. And they both have jobs and they have savings accounts and someone owns a home and everything is sort of put in place rather than, and the joke, but it's a true story, when I got engaged and got married to her, I found out she had $6 in her wallet. No savings account. $6.
At least she wasn't in debt.
And she needed $2,000 worth of dental work. Because her parents had pulled some teeth in the back and never replaced them, so her teeth were starting to drip.
Your parents had pulled the teeth?
No.
Well, I had them done.
How had them done?
Never completed it. So, look, no matter, whatever, I don't want to presume who you may marry, but when you get a chance, once you're making a decision,
Take a look at
ask
Casey.
to look in her mouth. Ask her what her dental condition is. Are there anything, or you know that you can't ask anything in interviews to them. So one of the throwaway questions at the end of the interview, you say, "Is there anything else that we haven't asked you that you think we should know about you before we make the job over?" So the guy who's been in the can for 10 years, or the guy that's on drugs, can have an opportunity to tell us that. So.
Or the girl who needs some dental work or something.
Anyway, the day that we got married in Greenwich, in Riverside, actually.
Okay, how old were you? I'm sorry.
I had turned 20 in April, and this was August.
This is August. And how old were you, Grampy?
23.
23.
And I thought he was very wise and mature, and I totally trusted him to take care of me. I went from my father's care to my husband's care, and it was a good decision for me. The day that we got married in August was so hot. I have the pictures of it, of the band that was playing. Their backs of their jackets were just wet. I mean, it was, oh my gosh, it was so hot.
No air conditioning.
And we started off on our, had a wonderful reception, and I've often told my mother it was the very best party of my life. And she did all this planning, and it was a wonderful wedding. It was everything that I wanted it to be. It was really fun. And we went off on our honeymoon trip, and we hadn't gotten more than about 10 miles, and I realized I'd forgotten my train case with all my makeup in it. So we had to go back to my house and pick up the train case.
I said, I'm not going in. I'm embarrassed. I'm driving back.
The marriage is over. Anyway. Then we drove going up to Maine for our honeymoon, and that's about a 7-hour drive maybe.
Well, it might have been. Henry would probably know as well as. Yeah.
Anyway, we needed to stop for the night, and Grampy being, this is the first time, you want to tell that part?
No, because this is the funny part, and it's my stumble. We had reservations at a resort on Lake Damariscotta in Maine starting on Sunday. Like you, I'd never been married before. I don't know when I was going to leave to start from the reception. So I didn't have a reservation in place on Saturday night. So we stopped in around 7 o'clock on the New England Thruway, and no reservations. Or no rooms. Now it's like 8:30. Fifth place we stopped, no room. And I'm picturing that we're going to spend our first night together in the back seat of my blue and white old Dodge that had rice in it. And the fifth guy that we stopped, he said, "I mean, you don't have reservations?" And I said, "No." He said, "You realize this is a Saturday night in August in New England, and you don't have reservations?" So what can I do? He said, "Well, why don't you get off the road here? There's an information booth in a little town about 10 miles down the road. Maybe they can help you." So we drive down to this lit information booth, and they make some phone calls, and they find some place that we go to. So we happily drive down with a 4-unit attached wooden units at this motel. It was $5 a night. And we drive up the hill to the motel, and Lee says to me, "Oh, look, there's your Aunt Peg and Uncle Ernie." I look up, and here's my aunt and uncle who've been at the wedding, taking their suitcases out of their cars. And I just jammed the car in reverse, stick shift it goes, back going down the hill, and I still picture this lady running down the hill, waving her arms, saying, Mr. Jennings, is that you? It's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And my face felt like it was 180 degrees. We drove off down the road, found the Bluebird Motel, which was $4 a night. The only thing I remember about that place is that we had a double bed, not a queen, not a king. You had to walk on the bed to get to the bathroom. Because the bed fit in the room perfectly. There was like 6 inches on each side. So to get in it, you get up on it, walk on it. And I didn't bring that story up to my uncle and my parents for 10 or 15 years. And I finally had the courage to bring it up. And my Aunt Peg said, no. I said to Ernie, that looks like Joel and Lee. And Ernie said, oh, they wouldn't be here. They've stopped long ago. And so it was just what happened, they'd had the same problem. They were going to another wedding on Sunday in Massachusetts, or maybe Maine. He grew up in Massachusetts. And couldn't find a place to stay.
So the rest of the trip was not nearly as trying, I can assume.
Well, while we were on vacation, while we were on our honeymoon, my reserve unit was activated because of the Berlin Wall crisis. The night we were married, the Soviets built the Berlin Wall. So I'll always remember that day.
Wow.
And by the time I got back, I was back in the Army for a year. So I went back, I had a job with Alcoa, went to work for Alcoa for a couple of months, and then in Pittsburgh, and then we moved back from Pittsburgh and spent a year at Fort Bragg, and then went on from there. And while we were at Fort Bragg, Lee got pregnant with Wendy,
And that started the
and
best.
Wendy was born in December of that year in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And she was so cute. She had false labor. We drove over to Shadyside Hospital and went in, and they said false labor, and we went home. But the second time we drove over, which of course was at night, I'd already practiced, so it was good for me. And you couldn't be in the labor room or within a mile. I smoked cigarettes for about 5 years. So I'm the classic old-time black and white movie. Pacing back and forth, chain smoking.
Now, while he's chain smoking, they decided that Wendy was so big that maybe I was having twins. So they took me down to x-ray me, and Joel saw me going into the elevator, still very pregnant, and in labor, and didn't know where I was going. And they did x-ray me, and I didn't have twins that time. That came later.
9'3". Your mother was 9'3".
She was a beautiful baby. Oh my
She was
gosh.
gorgeous.
Yes, she was.
I had a friend who called her Winky Bird. Or Window. Jim Powers would come over and
Window,
sit. They didn't have any kids. They'd come over and sit in her apartment, and he'd play with Window. He called her Window.
That window.
So
I just want to talk briefly about what's important to me.
Yeah.
Because I do want to share about our faith too. I have been a very blessed woman because I got to do what I always dreamed I wanted to do, which was to be a wife and a mother. And having 4 children has been just a joy in my life. I love being a mom, and I'm amazed at how wonderfully our children have turned out in spite of us. They are really, because we were young and did the best we knew how, but it wasn't perfect all the time. But we sure do love them, and did love them. And I think about the years when, early on, when the twins were babies, and Tracy and Wendy were, 3 and 5, and then 4 and 6, and they were great kids, and we muddled through. It was very busy, but I think our hardest times as a family was maybe when all 4 of them were teenagers, because I was a really good, confident mom before the children were teenagers. I think I knew how to take care of kids. I knew how to do kids. I knew how to train kids. Teenagers were a whole nother country for me. And I think part of the reason is that when I was a preteen and a teenager, I was not in a home setting. I was at boarding school. And so I really didn't have any model of what you did with teenagers. I just did what school told me to. So I've thought about that later, and that was really a time where the partnership of our marriage really came into play, because your grandfather was so much better with the kids and their trials and tribulations at that time. I just remember being so thankful that they had a dad who cared about him and was tough and could make him stand up and fly right. Because I sure couldn't get him to.
I would just say this in that regard. I agree with you, the kids, and then this unbelievable showering blessing of 10 grandkids.
Yes.
Couldn't be, and the span we've got Henry, our first Blue Bear, who we were stumbling around telling everybody, maybe had a book of pictures of Henry that she would corner guys with. Say, I want to show you pictures of my grandson. Could we just do 1 or 2 pictures? No, I got 45 and you're going to see them all. Isn't he cute? Well, he looks like most babies do to me. But she made most of our,
adorable.
We were very modest in age. She made most of our kids' clothes when the kids were young. A lot of Wendy and Tracy's clothes. I don't think I was that good. I don't think I was a good parent when we had teens. I think the thing that we didn't do well is there were no books at that particular time except Dr. Spock. We just sort of
flew by the seat of
parented
our pants.
reflexively. We learned a few things along the way. But if you're thinking about at 10 what's going to be like when this child is 12, you do some things in preparation. But as you say, in spite of the imperfections of parents, the kids turn out well and become responsible adults, and we love and proud of all of our kids. And we're still learning. Mm-hmm. In some ways, it's harder to parent when your kids are adult because you're not really you're their parent physiologically, but you're asked and called to be their friend because they've got their own adult life.
Yeah.
And one of the things that my mother modeled that I think we've done a good job on this, I would say, because I've been very intentional. My mother and father never made a critical comment about our family and our marriage once we got married. And I've made it my point, maybe to an extent, to too much of an extreme, tell each one of my kids and their sons, their husbands, that I'm not going to give advice or comment critically unless I'm asked, or unless I see you about to kill yourself or kill one of your kids. I'm going to give you the respect and opportunity, and I certainly don't want to ever emasculate my sons-in-law, who I love and respect, your dad and Eric, and so you don't get a do-over.
Right.
Yeah. But it's well worth doing. It's been my life's work, and this is the result of my life's work, and I can sit back and say, wow,
Well,
I am really happy.
Plus we were still in a generation where like only 5 or 10% of young women worked out of the
Yeah.
home. It was standard thing. I'm going to go out and be the breadwinner, and get the bacon, and she's going to cook it. And
How things
and the
have
role
changed.
Things
Yeah.
have changed, and for the good, in most regards. Somebody might say maybe it's not so good, but we're very fortunate in the fact that we're still married. I don't say that facetiously. And we're in good health. We have a number of friends that have died already or have serious health problems. They've had heart attacks, open heart surgery. They have cancer, hip replacements, knee replacements, back operations.
So far, so good.
And neither of us have anything of any great consequence. We're very fortunate.
I feel I'm really lucky to be as old as I am and have you guys as healthy as you are.
Oh, you're kind
I'm
of.
really, really lucky.
And the other thing I would say, and just to move this on, two things. What did I say? I got just a couple things I learned along the way about marriage that I would pass on to anybody that asked. And we were at an open house for a young couple about to get married, and we were asked to go around the room. Most of the couples there had been married 50 years, and I didn't know we were going to be asked. And I said, well, I think about 3 things that come to my mind. early on we learned there's a difference between loving someone and liking someone. But love is a commitment to behave in a certain way. 1 Corinthians 13, which is read in many weddings, love is patient, kind, long-suffering, keeps no record of wrong, so you're not
Forgives.
a scorekeeper. 20 years later, you're still mad at something that somebody happened. That's a bad recipe. But liking somebody is there are times when, as much as I love Lily, she really irritates me. And she's told me.
Me?
She's told me that I irritate her. So, and you can sense those times. So if I have courage, I'll say to her, "Do you like me today?" And she'll say, "Not really." But there's a difference between the two. And don't think because you don't like somebody that day
That you don't love
you
them.
can't love
Yeah.
them.
Of course.
Love is a
The
choice.
second thing I would say is you have to invest in relationships all the time. Just because we're married for 54 years doesn't mean we won't get divorced at 56 years. And we've seen couples do this.
Oh,
So
Just
when I
crazy.
say invest in the relationship, I'm very intentional when she comes down in the morning, which is usually after me. And I'm not saying this as a proud thing. I get up from whatever I'm doing and I go over and I give her a hug and tell her I love her. Most times I'll tell her she's beautiful. And if she makes me something I like, I'll say thank you. Thank yous and saying, just affirming somebody, complimenting somebody. I love the fact that you do this. I love your smile. It's worthwhile. Third thing I would say, as you
really quick, third thing, just let me. Sorry.
That's probably mine. Sounds like mine. Yeah, no, I won't.
And
Holding on to this until the end of the interview,
I
Joel.
think it's probably mine.
We're gonna get this back at the end of class.
Put it on silent. Okay.
No phone calls.
And then the third thing I would say about our marriage, we were church people growing up, but not really serious about our faith, and it was not a heartfelt or a commitment of our will. We both came to faith in our 30s, and it's been the most important thing in our lives. It's the foundation for our values, for how we measure our life. And Mimi and I, 350 mornings out of 365 every year, pray together in the morning. We read some scripture together. We may talk about what we read, and then we pray together. And we pray, praising God, giving thanks for the day. Teach us to number our days, Lord. We make in a heart of wisdom. Thank you, Lord, for this gift of this day. And then we usually pray for friends who are in distress, or our kids. I prayed this morning for Simon and Tracy and Eric, and for
Isabel.
for Addie, and later for Isabel. I wasn't thinking about Isabel. Sorry, Isabel. At the time.
Isabel started her new
So-
job this week.
So going back to this liking, you may have something you're struggling with and arguing about in your marriage. Pretty hard to stay mad at somebody if you pray with them. I mean that because in your heart, you're conscious of God's presence, and you know what He teaches about your behavior, and you let the anger and do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. Each of you should look not only after your own interest, but also after the interest of others. You know those scripture verses that will say, okay, because it's the truth.
One thing I would like to say about our faith and we discovered that going to church didn't necessarily mean you were a Christian, which was news to me. I thought everybody was either a Christian or a Jewish person or Islamic. I didn't understand that there was anything that I had to decide or think about in order to be a Christian. I thought I went to church, I was a Christian, or my parents took me to church, so I must be a Christian because I'm not Jewish. And when we were in our early 30s, our church had a weekend. We were part of a weekend called Cursillo, which is a Spanish word, and it means little school. Okay, and it's a weekend where you go. Men go one weekend, the women go another weekend, and you have a kind of an intense living experience of what it's like to live together as a church. Is the best way I can explain it. You listen to talks and stuff. It was there at that Cursillo for me that I discovered for the first time that God created me and loved me just like I was. There wasn't anything I had to do to make him love me. He already loved me. And I was overwhelmed with that because I think I had spent a lot of my life wanting to be loved and kind of trying to earn people's love by being as good as I knew how. And to find out that God loved me was, it was earth-shaking. And all I could think of was, how can I express back to God the love that I feel because he has loved me first. And I went to a luncheon afterwards, a Christian women's luncheon, and the speaker there invited me to give my heart to Jesus Christ and explained to me that Christ had died for me, for my sins, and that God loved me, and all he wanted was for me to accept his son as his son. And I said, that's what I want to do. So I accepted Christ then. But I wasn't sure because of my upbringing that I'd done it right. And I wanted to make sure I'd done it right. So in the next year, and this is kind of funny to people who have grown up in the faith, every time I was given the opportunity to accept Jesus Christ as my Lord, I did, because I wanted to make sure that I got it right. Then getting into Bible study fellowship shortly after that, after I had accepted Christ, was the thing that really changed my life, because in studying the Bible, I found out who God was, what his promises are, how faithful he is. And my faith in him increased and increased and increased as I got to know him better through the scriptures. And it has been the greatest blessing in our lives. And Joel came to know the Lord just about the same time, and we started in Bible study fellowship at the same time. And it has impacted every decision that we've made. It has impacted how we treat others, how we live our lives, what's important to us, and to seek to be, to please God is what my life is about. It's dancing for an audience of one. If I please him, that's all I need to do. And
But as you say, you don't have to please him.
no, because he already loves me. But what is funny is I still want to please people too. Mm-hmm. You know, I go back and forth, and so it's a struggle. But
You know, you said this would be the one thing I would add, because it's often misunderstood. We don't suggest for a minute that we're very good Christians, because we do bad things. We have
terrible thoughts.
Bad thoughts about get mad at somebody or whatever, that sort of thing. So just because we practice faith doesn't mean we're setting ourselves up and saying we're wonderful. I'm a Christian. Fred over here is not, so I'm wonderful. He's not wonderful. No, not that at all.
No.
I'm grateful, and I'm fortunate, and I'm blessed. And even with business, when we got involved and bought Gopher, which was in trouble financially and otherwise, if someone says to the extent that Gopher prospered over the 40 years, I would say absolutely not because I'm smart or that clever or creative, and it's not just me, it's hundreds of people. But living out as best I understood the principles that I would taught in the scriptures. Be kind to people, be caring to people, be respectful to people, value them, see what you can do to help them. They're your equals. They have lots of talents on their own. You're not the big boss, and they're the workers. That's sort of old-fashioned, top-down management structure that I grew up with. The blessed sword of thunder. Jennings, you better get some more sales in next week, or you're out of here. You understand that? Yes, sir. But anyway, but thank you for asking. And we love you and respect the fact that you want to take the time to make some kind of record of who we were, who we are, and someday who we were. Maybe your kids.
Well, I'm hoping to show this at your 60th wedding anniversary. That's what I'm going to do.
Wouldn't that be nice?
So he's going to be like, remember that time 6 years ago?
I
So,
do.
so we
I
got
do.
we got 3 things we got to do. You got to stay alive. I got to stay alive, and you and I have to stay married.
Well, do my best.
Well, you only give me a 1-year renewal every year. I never had
You sign
a
a lease.
long-term contract. I've never been given 10
Oh,
years.
honey.
You get a single-year contract with an option for an extension. A bonus
I've
if
been
you
a
do well.
probationary husband for all these years. Yeah, what about this unconditional love that we learned from God?
Yeah, I think the greatest thing about faith is knowing that I'm forgiven, that I can go and say, I'm really sorry. I've really messed up, and I've made a huge mistake. I really am sorry about it, and I get forgiven. I
Yeah,
am
you know,
forgiven.
there's
Nothing that He won't forgive me for, and that is a gift of peace of mind and
There was a
purpose. That's great. It's wonderful.
within faith circles, sort of a Pulitzer Prize winning book written by a guy named Philip Yancey called "What's So Amazing About Grace." And the one thing he says there, because he's decrying the condemnation sometimes that comes out of the Christian community, that one distinctive in Christianity over all the other religions in the world, including no religion, is forgiveness. Everything else is behavior oriented. You get there through Buddhism if you get nirvana. In Hinduism, you reincarnate and try to do it better each time, and you eventually become so and so and so. Islam is the laws, and Christianity is all about forgiveness. And forgiveness and love are very compelling and very attractive. Mm-hmm. But too often what people see from the Christian community, sadly, because it's not correct, is judgment and condemnation. And so you say, stay away from those guys. So we're still trying to do it better. You're the best.
Oh, you guys
Ooh, there.
are awesome for talking to me about this. I want to hear
You
it
are
from
wonderful.
your perspective. I mean, it's important to know what is important to you, and what you're you go into every day thinking about, and how you lead your life morally and ethically, and it's good to know.
And why?
Yeah.
And we feel honored that you want to do these films.
Yes, we sure do.
I wanted to be discovered all my life, and now I'm finally being discovered.
Did you have any actor folks who were
John Wayne.
John Wayne?
Yeah.
Was always that for you? What about you?
Oh, I think Kim Novak was always someone that I really thought was, and Audrey Hepburn. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
That's an interesting
I feel
question.
like we all kind of try to, we see these movie stars and try to.
Who's somebody for you?
Oh, I guess, I don't know, he's a lot older, but I always kind of admired Clint Eastwood and his right and wrong, and, fighting for
Spider.
what's right, and the way, his the way he carries himself,
Yeah.
whenever I'm in a situation where I'm unsure of my surroundings, or, a little nervous or something like that, I just put on that that face,
Okay, your
and
game
I
face.
puff
Yep.
my chest out, and I think,
Good for you.
you are Clint in this moment.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm in one of those situations, I think to myself, what is the worst thing that can happen?
Right.
Okay, I can deal
You could
with
be
that.
dead.
No, but the worst thing probably is not going to happen.
Mhm.
I can get through this. I remember taking my, I had done some artwork, and I was taking it to be approved by business, some of my stenciling work, and I was so nervous. Oh my gosh, I was just sick to my stomach, and I'm walking across the parking lot with my samples, and I'm just shaking, and I'm thinking, what is the worst thing that can happen? They can say to me, this is so awful, we could never use it. Well, if that's the worst, okay. Well, I took it in and they loved it. And how wonderful was that, But it's interesting the times in your life when you're when you're afraid or super nervous or to come up to that fear and to walk through it. And you're always better on the other side.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Always better on the
Yeah.
other side, yeah. So, I love what you say. I love your Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, just
Yeah, that's a little bit of a swagger and, yeah, just don't mess with me.
squint my eyes a little bit.
And one
Henry, I would love you to do this kind of an interview about yourself and tell us
Yeah.
what is important to you and what you are thinking and what directs you. I would.
I'll have to get back on that. I
Yeah.
like doing you guys, but I guess
Well, you're at a stage in life where you haven't drawn necessarily a lot of conclusions.
right.
So-
yeah. I'm
so anything's
looking
spilling
for
over.
wisdom here.
But you know, you told Simon we'd be down there in
Yeah, we'll finish up in 5. Within
We'll be
5.
fine.
oh, okay.
Just whatever your
I was
final.
nervous.
Yeah, whatever your final thoughts are.
Just to be grateful for every day. I'm saying that to myself.
Yeah.
Just every day is a gift. This day at 11:59, it's over. You don't ever get it back. So for you have to decide: am I going to go to the Apostle Highlands? Am I going to go to Green Bay? Because you can't do both of them. But and too often I've lost a lot of days through my life because I was either worrying about something I did yesterday, or worrying about something I had to do a week later.
Mm-hmm.
And to try to embrace the day.
That's one of the great things about this trip is that I really get to embrace the day for what it is. And yesterday is yesterday, but today is its own adventure, its own mystery.
Yeah.
Like I came in here to Minnesota with like no expectations, and had a wonderful time doing baseball and football and seeing Simon and the Hagmans and getting a chance to interview you guys. I mean, it's just. I couldn't have done anything more this trip, really.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
I think I got every bit out of it that I wanted to. Yeah, so.
You're someone, seriously, Kate,
Mom.
for now. This is one neat guy that is warm, and he's got a lot of wisdom for 24 years?
Almost 24, yeah.
Almost
I'm turning 24 in.
September, okay.
Oh, yeah, I guess less than a month and like
Wow.
3
Yeah.
weeks I turned 24.
You're still rounding down. I
Yep.
round way down.
Yeah.
I'm in my late 60s.
Uh-huh.
Very, 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 very late 60s.
Like 78.
7!
77. Oh, sorry. And Henry, I want to know if you remember when you were about 3 that you said to me, Grammy, we will always be best friends. I have carried that in my heart always. And I feel that. You are very special.
I've always
to
thought
me.
that. I've always
I
thought
love
that.
it.
Yeah.
I didn't know he said that to you.
I talk.
did.
I talk very highly about you, Grammy. In fact, I'm
Thank you.
always like, and I get like, I revert back to a 3-year-old. I feel like whenever I talk to you, not talk to you, but talk about you. I mean, like I just have that very grand child.
We have had very special bond as you have given all the 9 that follow you a hard path to follow. But they've done it fantastically.
Yes.
Yes.
They have.
One of the
They're
joys of
each
being-
precious and wonderful. Each precious.
One of the joys of being a grandparent is the closest thing we have the opportunity as a grandparent to give that unconditional love. What God gives is unconditional love, not based. Well, if you get an A, and parents unconditionally love you, but they're responsible for your upbringing. So their job, it's a piece of cake to be a grandparent and just
Yeah. Oh, it's
not
so much
have to
fun.
be corrective or anything like that. So,
Mhm.
so and love unconditionally. I don't care what your grades were. Your dad and your mom do. So
As we did when they were kids.
so we were not nearly as much fun when we were parents.
Yeah.
I think each one of our kids would testify, but
Yeah.
but privileged. And we had good parents. I had a wonderful mother and father, and Lee's mom and dad were lovely. Sadly, her mother died early in her 60s, and
Yeah, I was 32 when my mother died, 33. And I've often, there have been so many times in my life when I wanted to know how she handled situations that I found myself in. You know, she had many times that she had to handle tough stuff. And I get so mad that she's not there at the other end of the telephone. And I go, Mother, how did you do this? But I've had my sisters and my brother. Well, not so much my brother, but I have him now, which is good. My baby brother.
when my parents died, one thing I realized, which would be a piece of perspective for people of your generation, when my parents died, my mother last, I realized how little I knew about their early life, because there were no pictures, a little different now, and how uninterested I was in who they were early on in their life.
Yeah, so this is
So I eventually
amazing
wrote
that
up
you would do this.
which your mother has,
Really?
a 7 or 8 page biography of my father, 7 or 8 page biography of my mother. I found out things about my mother I didn't know, but I realized that I was so focused as a teenager, like we are, on myself. And I regretted the questions I didn't ask my father.
What would you have asked him?
Oh, yeah. What was it like growing up on a farm with 2 older brothers? Tell me a little bit about your dad, who was, I understood, was quite stern. Did he beat you? What were your chores on the farm? I know you didn't have a lot of money. How did you happen to go to Fishburne Academy, a private school in Waynesboro, Virginia, in your high school years? I don't understand that. Now, I want to say this to you. Besides, thank you immensely.
Yes.
You don't have to give in here.
Oh, no, I do. I want to.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I do.
Because you
Yeah.
got a 5 hour
No, I know, I gotta drive, but you remember how I left South Dakota at 5:30 on like the other day. And you guys were just like, we'll pay for a hotel, please.
Oh, this is yours. This is what I do.
I'm like, you think
What did I do?
You'd be crazy. Oh, that's okay.